ready. The Kings, of course, have the fourth pick in the draft coming up in about a month. And Aaron Torres from Fox Sports Radio, college basketball analyst, joins us right now on the Nick Cattle Show, Sports 1140 KHTK. Aaron, thank you for the time. We appreciate you. Let me ask you first, who is your favorite player in this draft and why?
Who is my favorite player in the draft? My favorite player is probably Ben Mathurin from Arizona. He's a killer. He's a killer. And the thing that I really respect about him, I know both the new coaching staff and the old coaching staff there at Arizona pretty well. By the way, I don't think he's somebody maybe for the Kings, but what I really respect about him is that, this time last year he probably could have gotten drafted, and I'm not saying this as a college basketball guy, but, really knew that he wasn't ready. He didn't rush the process, came back, turned into an All-American, is going to make himself a lot of money by returning to college basketball for 1 year. So I know everybody's financial situation is different. I know some guys, if you're a second-round pick, you just go and take whatever cash you can get. But I do respect the guys that in this world are kind of self-aware enough to sit there and say, you know what, I'm not quite ready. I'm not ready to be a professional. Let me give it another year or two. He did that, but then he also came back, took full advantage of everything at Arizona, was an All-American, and as I said, I don't think he'll go to Sacramento, but I think he'll hear his name called in the top 10 to 12.
Freakish athlete. Aaron, do you agree with the majority that you've got Smith, Holmgren, and Banchero as the top three in whichever order?
See, I do, Nick, but, the thing that I would kind of push back on is, to me, it feels like the narrative that is being pushed is that there's the clear top three, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but then there's like a big gap between everybody else. And I just don't think it's like that. Like, just as an example, I can't, the year like it was Zion was the clear number one and Ja was the clear number two, and then there was that seemed pretty accurate to me, and obviously that hasn't worked out for Zion, but you get the point. This year, I see the argument for all three of those guys as top three guys, but I don't think that gap between number three and number four, number three depending on who you like, and number six if you like Keegan Murray from Iowa or Ben Mathurin or Shaedon Sharpe or whomever, I don't think that gap is that big. I think this is a draft where obviously, a lot of these teams at the top have real needs. Some of them, more like the New Orleans type teams that are picking in the top 10. I think they're more drafting for fit, but I think that the top three is fair. But I don't think there's this very clear-cut top three and then a huge gap. If you like Jaden Ivey, if you like Keegan Murray, on and on, I think that gap is pretty small.
When does the gap get bigger?
I think, again, it just depends what you need and what your time frame is. That's the part that I'd say the top 8, 9, I really think will be productive players at one point. Now, if you're Sacramento and you're trying to find that final piece to get you back to the playoffs for the first time in forever, that's a lot different than, say, Houston, who we know is in the early stages of a 3 to 4 year rebuild. So I think there's really that top 8, 10, I really think is going to be productive if you include on top of the top three Keegan Murray, Johnny Davis, all the guys that I mentioned. I'm curious about Shaedon Sharpe. I don't think anybody really has a great idea on him. But I do think there's that 7, 8, 9 will be good NBA players. I don't think they'll be busts. I just think how good they'll be depends on where they go, what they'll be asked to do, the time frame they're expected to produce, things like that.
Aaron Torres from Fox Sports Radio is with us here on the Nick Cattle Show, Sports 1140 KHTK. Let's jump back to that top three of Smith, Holmgren, and Banchero. Out of those three guys, Aaron, which one would you be most confident in saying, oh, he's surefire to be an impact guy at the next level?
I would say Banchero for sure, and it's for all the reasons that we saw. I mean, listen, I don't have any super unique opinion on Chet. I've seen him in person a bunch, and certainly when he was in college. And I've seen the nights where you see all those tools come together and he's hitting threes from 25 feet and he's blocking shots at the rim. But then I've also seen those nights where he just gets bullied in the paint. I mean, they played Duke in Vegas in November. I was at that game, and he was really limited in what he could do against a guy with similar size, similar athleticism, whatever. Jabari Smith, the tools are there, but there's some tools that are really advanced, some tools that are not. And so Paolo, I just think, is certainly of that top three the most complete player. I think he's the guy that's ready to step in and contribute next year right away, pretty much independent of where he goes. And I think it's for all the reasons that we saw at Duke on that run to the Final Four. Mid-range game, three-point shot. Another kid that I really respect because early in his high school career was kind of labeled a low-post guy and really spent basically his junior and senior year developing that mid-range and three-point range in his game. It was interesting. I saw an interview with former Sacramento Kings head coach Eric Musselman, who is now the head coach at Arkansas, who beat Duke in the Final Four. And he said that Paolo, who obviously he knows matchups, he's coached in the NBA, he said Paolo was the guy that we had all season long. There was not one guy that we just had no answer for. No matter where he catches the ball, he can make plays, he can shoot, he can post up. And so to answer your question, Nick, that's definitely the guy that, in my opinion, regardless of where he ends up, I think he'll be able to contribute and contribute early.
All right, so you said there's no big gap to you from the top three to the next three or four guys. But, Aaron, if you had to have the fourth guy, right, if you had your big board, who was the fourth guy behind Smith, Holmgren, and Banchero?
Well, it's Jaden Ivey, but I also think that there were some things that were a little bit concerning late in the season with Jaden Ivey. Started out shooting the ball really well, got a little bit worse as the season went on. I thought he kind of coasted at times last year. And he doesn't really make a ton of people better in terms of being kind of a lead guard. The assist numbers just aren't as high as you would expect. But I also can't deny that, the tools and the athleticism are insane. And, I know it's cliche, but I think it's totally fair to say that some of that athleticism is pretty on par with Ja Morant, from the again, leaping ability to beat you off the dribble. But Ja took over games in college. I mean, we saw Ja in the NCAA tournament with a triple-double.
Yeah.
This was the guy that was playing St. Peter's to go to the Elite Eight and couldn't take over a game late. So I'm not sitting here and saying he's a definitive bust. I'm not sitting here and saying that the opposite isn't true as well, that I don't see why everybody's intrigued by him. But I don't think that at times it translated on the court, and that's always concerning for a guy like that with me.
Aaron, let's take away the playoff aspirations for a second here in Sacramento. If you were the Kings, how willing would you be able to take a shot at Shaedon Sharpe?
The tools are definitely there, man. The tools are there, and I think this would be on, and you would know this better living there, it'd be on your scouting department, your player personnel department, your everybody that does the background work, because he's an incredible talent. But everyone's trying to figure out what the heck happened at Kentucky, and I have some thoughts and insight that, is probably on point with most of everything that you've heard. But, gets to Kentucky, there's mixed reports of Calipari wanted him to play, Calipari didn't want him to play, he wanted to play, but the adults in his life wouldn't let him. And so what's the deal? I mean, is he afraid of competition? Did he know all along that he was never going to play at Kentucky? Did he use Kentucky? Again, does he love basketball? And then, oh, by the way, there were mixed reports over what happened at the Combine in terms of did he leave, did he not leave, all that good stuff in the middle of the week. Does that mean that there was some sort of guarantee? And so, it's cliche this time of year to throw around the term mystery man and we don't know that. But with Shaedon Sharpe, that's it. But I get it, again, from the limited tape that we have of him, that athleticism is there, that explosiveness is there. And let's be honest, if he played college basketball next year, even if he wasn't great, if he played up to his potential, we'd be talking about him as the number one potential overall pick in next year's draft, maybe number two behind the kid from France. But I just bring it up to say, if you believe that if he had just gone to Kentucky and played up to his capabilities, wasn't a transcendent Zion-level superstar, just up to his capabilities, that he's the first, second, third pick in next year's draft, then it does make sense to draft him, even if it's going to be a little bit of a process to kind of get him up to speed.
Aaron, we got about a minute left here. Quickly, does Keegan Murray have star ability at the NBA level?
I really don't think so. But that doesn't mean that he can't be hyper productive in a, effort, energy, all that kind of stuff. And I had a great comp in my head. I was watching the NBA playoffs, but I'm blanking on it right now because he's just a guy that I think you can throw in because of the kind of length, the athleticism, the ability to stretch the floor. I think he can compete right away. Now, is he the guy that puts an organization on his back? I don't know that I see that. But again, the Kings, and you know them better than me, but I think with some of the guys, Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, et cetera, I don't think people think that they need this superstar. I think he feels like a very good piece on a playoff team 2 or 3 years down the road. I wouldn't label him a superstar, but, honestly, let's be honest, in these drafts, how many of these guys end up actually being that? If you can get a productive player, it's gonna work out really well for you in the long term.
Great stuff, Aaron. Let's do this again before the draft, my friend.
Yeah, let me know. I had to kind of shortchange you guys today. I apologize to your producer.
Good.
Well, I apologize to you, Nick. Jay, I could take or leave, but I apologize to you. And hit me in June before the draft, and we'll definitely do this a few more times, okay?
All right, my man. Thanks. I appreciate you. There goes Aaron Torres, Fox Sports Radio college analyst. A lot of good stuff from him. A lot of good stuff.